In the dystopian universe of Cyberpunk 2077, Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves, emerges as one of the most controversial and iconic characters. Idolized and loathed in equal measure, Johnny represents the fierce anti-establishment spirit of Night City, but his rage runs deeper than just simple rebellion. His story is marked by profound trauma, fractured identity, intense narcissism, and even a dependency on chaos, making him both fascinating and deeply flawed. Today we'll peel back the layers of Johnny's psyche, exploring the experiences and psychological scars that shape his character. Let's find out what drives Silverhand, what makes him tick, what makes him the legendary explosive walking paradox. And Chooms, it would be absolutely preem if you smash that like and subscribe button. I have more psychoanalysis videos coming your way. To understand Johnny's psychology fully, it helps to know the world that he inhabits. In Cyberpunk 2077, corporations hold immense power, often controlling or outright owning every aspect of life in Night City. Government has eroded to the point of irrelevance, and megacorporations like Arasaka enforce their agendas without constraint, treating individuals as disposable tools. In this landscape, figures like Johnny and his band Samurai push back against this oppression, although their rebellion is often crushed by ruthless corporate control. Johnny's character and his psyche is shaped by this world of control, exploitation, and betrayal. But Johnny wasn't always a rock star. Born as Robert John Linder in College Station, Texas, he started as a young idealist who, like many, fell into the devastating reality of war. Enlisting in the army as a teenager, Johnny would find himself in the brutal Central American Wars. It was a series of conflicts fueled by corporate interests and government corruption. The wars were a battleground for power and resources, and Arasaka, one of the largest corporations in the world, played a significant role, entrenching itself within military and governmental spheres to expand its influence. Arasaka's role in the conflict, exploiting soldiers and manipulating warfare for profit, left a permanent mark on Johnny, laying the foundation for his intense hatred towards the corporation. Johnny's experience in the war was transformative, not only for the physical loss of his arm, which he would replace with chrome, hence the name Silverhand, but also for the deep emotional wounds he carried. In the game, Johnny recalls to V a defining moment in the wars, when a fellow soldier would take a bullet for him, sacrificing his life so Johnny could survive. This experience woke something in Johnny, making him question everything he had been fighting for. The realization that soldiers like him were nothing more than expendable pawns for corporate and political gain led him to go AWOL, abandoning the ideals he once held. However, deserting wasn't just an act of survival, it was a rejection of the system that exploited human lives for profit, a theme that would become central to his worldview. Johnny's rage against Arasaka is rooted in this betrayal. To him, Arasaka isn't just a corporation, it's the embodiment of every manipulation, every falsehood that stole his youth and innocence. His hatred for the corporation becomes a defining trait, fueling his every move. It's not merely anger, it's a consuming fire born from a personal vendetta against the machine that used and discarded people like him. Arasaka, in Johnny's eyes, represents everything wrong with the world, an institution that turns human lives into commodities, and it's his mission to tear it down at any cost. Johnny's music became an expansion of his rage against the machine, and he would use it as a tool to galvanize the masses, inciting war against the corpos. In Erik Erikson's model of psychosocial development, identity formation is a crucial stage, particularly in adolescence and young adulthood. You see, Johnny actually lied about his age and joined the military when he was just a teenager, a very important time frame for discovering who one is. Johnny's music, his image, and his anti-establishment messaging are extensions of his ongoing and evolving identity crisis. Through his music, Johnny crafts an identity that is both defiant and resonant with others who experience similar struggles. The philosopher and social critic Theodor Adorno argued that art, especially music, can act as a form of rebellion against authoritarian control in mass culture. Johnny's music challenges corporate power and the dominance of megacorps in Night City, embodying Adorno's idea that authentic art resists the conformist pressures of capitalist society. But by creating music that defies the status quo, Johnny becomes a symbol for those in Night City who resist corporate authority. His performances aren't just concerts, but they're acts of defiance, uniting people under the banner of rebellion and giving a voice to collective discontent. For Johnny, music is both personal catharsis and a political statement, amplifying his disdain for corporate exploitation. And I apologize for really driving this nail in about how much Johnny Silverhand hates authority, but it's literally like 90% of what he talks about in the game. Johnny's rage against Arasaka spills into a general disdain for any entity that imposes control or exploits power. His anti-authoritarian stance is more than a trait, it's a driving ideology, a refusal to bow to any one structure or system. And Johnny is a man of ideals. He is a man of focus, commitment, and sheer will. And look at this, I thought this scene from John Wick was fitting. It looks like he's storming Arasaka. This constant defiance also becomes a double-edged sword. Johnny's dependency on rebellion was one of the things that fed into his inability to maintain lasting relationships or find inner peace. For Johnny, rebellion is survival. It's not just physical but spiritual. Without it, he faces a void that he is terrified to confront, showing his deep need for chaos in order to give his life meaning. Johnny's trauma doesn't just fuel his hatred, it also fuels his love. It shapes his relationships, particularly with Alt Cunningham, the brilliant netrunner, and the love of his life. Well, one of them. Their relationship was built on a foundation of passion and mutual understanding, yet it was fraught with the very challenges that define Johnny. Alt's intelligence and independence attracted Johnny deeply. Unlike many who simply idolized and simped over him, she could see through his bravado and connect with the person he was beneath the fame. She challenged him in ways nobody could. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I love my wife. However, Johnny's inner demons cast a shadow over the relationship. He struggled with intense feelings of vulnerability around Alt. For someone who thrived on independence and defiance, relying on somebody else emotionally exposed a fragility that this man could not tolerate. His fear of abandonment, coupled with his underlying sense of inadequacy, often made him push and pull between dependence and distrust. The stronger their connection grew, the more he feared losing it, oftentimes lashing out and actively trying to push her away because his connection with her terrified him. In many ways, Johnny's relationship with Alt was an emotional paradox. She was both his sanctuary and his trigger, embodying the stability that he craved and the vulnerability he despised in himself. When Arasaka abducted Alt to use her for the Soul Killer program, Johnny's world shattered in more ways than one. Alt's kidnapping wasn't just a personal loss, it was a brutal reminder of Johnny's inability to protect the ones that he loved from the forces that he detested, the powers that be. For Johnny, Alt represented the one part of his life that felt pure and real in a world of betrayal and exploitation. Losing her to Arasaka's schemes was more than just a Greek tragedy. It was an existential blow that left him seething with guilt and rage. Johnny's inability to save her crystallized his wrath for Arasaka, turning his anti-corporate crusade into an intensely personal vendetta. The loss of Alt redefined Johnny's mission and sharpened his anger. In his mind, destroying Arasaka became synonymous with avenging Alt, reclaiming a sense of power that had been stripped from him. But the pain of her loss also altered how he viewed his own identity. As somebody who positioned himself as a protector from when he joined the military to the hero who could fight for change, as a rock star, Johnny in this moment found himself helpless, facing the hard truth that he, too, could fail. Alt's loss wasn't just the source of guilt, it magnified every insecurity he tried to hide. every fear of inadequacy he tried to bury under his rebellious image. Many would say that Johnny's one true love was always Johnny, but Johnny's complicated relationships also extend to Rogue, another partner who shared in his anti-corporate ideology. Rogue was a significant figure in Johnny's life, a definite ride or die, someone who joined him in his mission yet ultimately walked away due to his unyielding commitment to chaos and self-destruction, and also because Johnny cheated on her. Their relationship was a casualty of Johnny's inability to balance his ideals with personal connections, showing that his need to constantly battle against authority was stronger than his ability to nurture a relationship. I think, in his own ways, he did love both Alt and Rogue, but he was just too messed up to know it or properly show it. One might even say he passionately loved the chase and how Alt made him feel, but that Rogue was always the perfect partner for him, because she shared in his ideals. She also wanted to give it to the corporations just as much as Johnny. Either way, Johnny Silverhand was way too self-absorbed. You know, underneath Johnny's defiance and all that bravado, there's actually a lot of vulnerability and regret that he's hiding. He puts up this tough front, but deep down, he has serious doubts about his choices and the hurt that he's caused, especially with people like Alt, Rogue, and his band members that he's pushed away. Every now and then when his guard slips, you can see those buried insecurities come out. It's like his war against Arasaka and his relentless need to rebel are ways to cover up how inadequate he feels sometimes, and all those past mistakes, he doesn't want to face them. That big personality of his, it's a coping mechanism, a way to distract himself from his own self-doubt that his chaotic lifestyle just keeps on feeding into. Johnny's need for validation and the grandiose self-concept he cultivated are central to his identity. As Kohut's theory of narcissism suggests, Johnny's fame was a way to cope with unmet emotional needs, making his rockstar persona both a shield and a burden. But this dependency on external validation created a contradiction. Johnny craved admiration, yet resented those who provided it. He was trapped in his reliance on others to uphold his own fragile sense of self-worth. This dependence and resentment are reflected in his toxic relationships, where he oscillates between seeking closeness and pushing people away. His behavior mirrors what Kohut described as the narcissistic struggle between a need for admiration and a desire for independence. Johnny's contempt for the people who validate him reflects this paradox, trapping him in a cycle of self-sabotage and isolation. I would actually really be interested to know about Johnny Silverhand's relationship with his parents and what his childhood was like. Psychiatrist John Bowlby's attachment theory explains how early relationships with caregivers shape our approach to intimacy, trust, and dependence in adulthood. He identified 4 main attachment styles: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Alright, pay attention and let me know what attachment style you grew up with. Mine was avoidant disorganized. So, secure attachment forms when caregivers are consistently responsive, fostering self-worth and trust in relationships. Anxious attachment arises from inconsistent caregiving and is marked by a fear of abandonment and a need for reassurance. Avoidant attachment results from emotionally unavailable caregivers, leading to discomfort with closeness and a preference for independence. Disorganized attachment often stems from neglect or abuse and creates confusion and unpredictability in relationships. And again, I genuinely am curious to see what your attachment style was growing up. I think it would be interesting to see what the majority of people would say about how they grew up and how it affected their relationships into adulthood. These attachment styles form what Bowlby called an internal working model, a mental blueprint of how we view relationships, ourselves, and others' reliability, which persists into adulthood. In adult relationships, these attachment styles manifest in predictable ways. Securely attached adults are comfortable with intimacy and autonomy, while anxious individuals often seek constant reassurance and fear of abandonment. Avoidant individuals value independence and may struggle with closeness, while disorganized adults experience chaotic, often self-destructive relationship patterns. And wow, I am reading this script right now and just thinking about all my past relationships and thinking about how my avoidant, disorganized attachment style really messed a lot of things up. I'm laughing at it because it's interesting thinking about this in retrospect. But yeah, Bowlby's theory has become a cornerstone in psychology, especially in understanding relationship dynamics and emotional challenges. Therapy often draws on attachment theory to help individuals recognize and work through their attachment patterns, leading to healthier, more fulfilling relationships. And bringing it around town back to Johnny, based on his behavior, he exhibits traits associated with anxious avoidant attachment. This attachment style often rises from inconsistent or emotionally unavailable early relationships where an individual learns to fear both abandonment and intimacy. And that's wild. That's crazy. Like, seriously, think about it. Like, imagine you need and want love, but you're scared of being abandoned, you're scared of being alone, and you're also scared of having that love. It's a crazy conundrum. Johnny craves deep, meaningful connections, but as they develop, he often pulls away, fearing the vulnerability that comes with them. His intense love for Alt shows this ambivalence. He's deeply attached, yet when emotionally overwhelmed, he distances himself, fearing dependency. Johnny's avoidant tendencies lead him to self-sabotage, especially in relationships with Rogue and Alt. His fear of being trapped in intimacy makes him alternate between his intense passion and withdrawal, destabilizing his relationships and intensifying his internal struggles. But that's enough about Johnny Silverhand's love life. Let's talk about Johnny's death instinct, which sounds absolutely metal. Johnny's self-destructive tendencies can be analyzed through Freud's concept of death instinct or death drive or thanatos, a subconscious compulsion towards self-destruction. Freud believed that along our instinct to survive, there exists a counter-instinct that draws us towards risky, self-harming behaviors as a way to escape suffering. Johnny's chaotic actions and willingness to put his life on the line for his vendetta against Arasaka reveal this death drive. Not to mention his substantial substance abuse, but we'll talk about that soon. His relentless pursuit of revenge, even at the expense of his own well-being, reflects this destructive impulse. With Johnny, the death drive manifests in his willingness to confront Arasaka, a force that he believes must be annihilated even if it means taking himself down with it. This compulsion to destroy reveals a darker aspect of Johnny's psyche, a desire to erase his pain by obliterating the forces he blames for it, all while not caring one bit if he is hurt or dies in the process. Amidst his turbulent life, Johnny turns to substance abuse as a form of escapism. His reliance on cigarettes, alcohol, and drugs highlights his inability to confront his inner turmoil directly. Substance abuse becomes a way to numb the pain, avoiding the unresolved trauma and guilt he harbors. Psychobiologist Marvin Zuckerman's sensation-seeking theory identifies certain personality traits that make individuals more likely to engage in risky or self-destructive behaviors. Sensation seekers crave intense experiences and are often drawn to drugs, alcohol, and other stimulating activities, like skydiving or riding a motorcycle. Johnny's personality aligns with high sensation seeking. He thrives on intense emotions in high-stakes situations. Drugs, alcohol adds to this intensity, aligning with his rebellious lifestyle. For Johnny, substance use amplifies the thrill and danger he craves, fitting into his anti-authoritarian personality. The constant need for new experiences may be, in part, Johnny's way of avoiding boredom or monotony, which would actually force him to face his deeper issues. By seeking stimulation through substances, he avoids the introspection that comes with stillness, preventing any real self-awareness or healing. That's why therapy is so important. Just imagine, what if Johnny Silverhand got therapy right after coming back from war? And this is a really good spot for a sponsorship. Anyways, in both battle and personal relationships alike, Johnny's indifference to safety places not only himself but those around him in danger, creating a push-pull effect where he attracts people, yet also repels them through his self-destructive actions. Just think about his relationship with Rogue. Johnny's existence as an engram amplifies his existential struggles, placing him in a state of psychological limbo. Existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre argued that our identity is shaped by our actions and choices. But, in a Black Mirror style, for half a century, as an engram, Johnny no longer has control over his destiny. He's a consciousness trapped within V, the character that we all play, dependent on another's decision for relevance and purpose. This loss of agency is a direct assault on his identity, and a painful reminder that he is no longer the legend he once was. I mean, people still obviously remember him, they still venerate him as a legend, but he's lost his peak. Oh wait, I should quickly explain how this all happened, how Johnny became an engram. Alt and Johnny are in a back alley after a fight. Alt gets captured by Arasaka. Alt is the best netrunner in Night City, and Arasaka forces her to develop the Soul Killer program, a technology capable of extracting and digitizing a person's consciousness, essentially imprisoning their mind but also being able to transfer said consciousness into another body. Johnny goes to try and save Alt and bring down the Arasaka Tower. During the assault, Johnny confronted Arasaka's brutal cybernetic enforcer, Adam Smasher, who was more chrome than Gannic, and who ultimately overpowered Johnny. As Johnny's physical life ended, his consciousness was captured by Soul Killer, leaving him in a ghostly state as an engram, a digital version of himself that would live on in the digiworld, but remain forever haunted by his unfinished mission and unresolved pain. Now, instead of being the center of attention, Johnny finds himself as a side character, a nuisance to V at times. His once sure sense of importance is now fading, turning him from a cultural icon into a remnant of the past. Sartre's concept of bad faith applies here. Johnny is forced to confront the reality of his new existence, where his sense of relevance is a shadow of his former self, making him painfully aware of his insignificance. He's just another cog in the big machine. His internal struggle reflects Sartre's idea of authenticity, as Johnny struggles with the uncomfortable truth that he doesn't really have his own identity anymore. This existential crisis deepens through his interactions with V. As V becomes Johnny's other, Johnny is forced to see himself from an outside perspective, exposing his flaws, regrets, and insecurities. Sartre's existentialist view emphasizes that the gaze of the other can reveal truths about oneself, and for Johnny, V's perspective serves as a harsh mirror, stripping away the idealized self-image that he once held. Johnny's unresolved guilt and repressed rage are manifestations of Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self, which contains parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. Johnny's inability to process his guilt over Alt's fate fills his shadow with anger and resentment, which he projects onto Arasaka and those around him. By refusing to confront these buried emotions, Johnny remains stuck in this cycle of violence and revenge, with his shadow self-driving him towards destructive actions. Johnny's defiant, charismatic persona masks the psychological scars he carries, making it difficult for him to confront the darkness within himself. His unresolved anger becomes an outward force, propelling him towards vengeance while preventing him from finding inner peace. And to my knowledge, after going through multiple endings, all of which are just kind of sad in their own way, Johnny never really fully realizes anything, or at least it's not conveyed to us in the game. He doesn't get back with Alt, and he doesn't really see the downfall of Arasaka. Well, unless you're talking about the DLC. That kind of happens. At the heart of Johnny's mission is a singular goal: to dismantle Arasaka, the corporation he believes embodies all corruption and power abuse in the world. Destroying Arasaka isn't merely about revenge for Alt or the personal scars he carries, it's about making a statement, sending a message, proving that one person can take down a seemingly untouchable force. In a world where he feels increasingly alienated, dismantling Arasaka is his way of leaving a legacy, immortalizing himself. Again, because he loves himself, almost as much as I love my wife. But Johnny's goal isn't just to become a hero or to destroy Arasaka, it's to create meaning, to leave that lasting impact that's going to echo even after his death. He sees his presence in V's mind as an opportunity to finish that fight against Arasaka, to carve out a final moment of significance that transcends his own mortality. In the world of Cyberpunk, nothing ever ends without tragedy, whether it's Johnny, V, or even the protagonist from the anime Cyberpunk Edgerunners, really good by the way. Each character's path is filled with inevitable loss. And I think it's a very interesting narrative that this universe has. The world is designed to crush dreams, to twist victories into bittersweet memories. There is never really a true happy ending, only moments of significance in a world that marches on, indifferent to those it leaves behind. It's in these fleeting moments, in the echoes of their actions, that characters like Johnny find meaning, even if they ultimately remain ghosts in the shadows of a world that never truly changes. I hope you enjoyed this dissection of Johnny Silverhand, but you know what? Someone should really psychoanalyze Solomon Reed, from the Cyberpunk DLC Phantom Liberty. He just looks like a man with demons. Like and subscribe on your way out, chooms. Beers on me.